And the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. McBath, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cook, Facebook acquired WhatsApp in 2014, and at that time, Sheryl Sandberg told the board that the deal was critical for countering the App Store power of Apple and Google, who choke off Facebook's access to mobile devices. Was Sheryl Sandberg correct? Does Apple have the power to exclude apps from the App Store?
If you look at the history of this, Congresswoman, we've increased the number of apps from 500 to 1.7 million. So there's a very wide gate for the App Store. And there's fierce competition for developers, and we want every app we can on the platform.
Okay, so but Mr. Cook, then what you're saying is that Apple can exclude apps from the App Store. In fact, it has. In 2018, Apple introduced an app called Screen Time, which helps people limit the amount of time they or their kids spend on their iPhones. Is that correct?
It sounds right.
Okay, but before Screen Time existed, there were other apps in the App Store that gave parents control over their kids' phone usage, apps like Our Pact and Kids Locks, and parents depended on them. Soon after you introduced Screen Time, however, you removed these competing apps from the App Store. One mother wrote to Apple saying, and I quote her, "I am deeply disappointed that you have decided to remove this app and others like it, thereby reducing consumer access to much-needed services to keep children safe and protect their mental health and well-being." Mr. Cook, why did Apple remove competing apps right after you released Screen Time?
We were concerned, Congresswoman, about the privacy and security of kids. The technology that was being used at that time was called MDM, and it had the ability to sort of take over the kid's screen, and a third party could see it. And so we were worried about their safety.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Today
that.
we have...
I appreciate that, but the timing of the removal seems very coincidental. If Apple wasn't attempting to harm competitors in order to help its own app, why did Phil Schiller, who runs the App Store, promote the Screen Time app to customers who complained about the removal of rival parental control apps?
Congresswoman, I can't see this email. I'm sorry, my eyes are not good enough to read it. But I see Screen Time as just an alternative, that there are over 30 parental control apps that are in the App Store today. And so there's vibrant competition for parental controls out there.
Okay. Well, Mr. Cook, the fact is that Apple sidelined Screen Time's competition by keeping them out of the App Store. And while Apple claims these competitors weren't meeting Apple's privacy standards, these apps creators say that you admitted them back in 6 months later without requiring significant privacy changes. And, of course, 6 months is truly an eternity for small businesses to be shut down. Even worse, if all the while a larger competitor is actually taking away customers. And, you know, this is not the first time something like this seems to have happened, Mr. Cook. Let me give you another example, you know, of the harm that's been caused to your competitors. In 2010, Apple introduced an online bookstore called the iBookstore, where it offered ebooks. And the only major publisher that didn't agree to join iBookstore was Random House. Random House wanted to offer its own ebooks through its own apps, and submitted their apps to be added to the App Store. Amidst continued negotiations between Apple and Random House, Senior VP Eddie Q said, and I'm quoting him, I'm quoting him when he said, it prevented an app from Random House from going live in the App Store. Q himself cited this app rejection as a factor in finally getting Random House to give in and join iBookstore. Mr. Cook, is it fair for Apple to use its power over the App Store to pressure a business to join Apple's own app?
I can't see the email, and so I don't know the context of it, but there are many reasons why an app might not initially go through. the App Store gate because it may not work properly. There may be other issues with it, so it's very difficult to see. What I would say though, on a macro basis, the gate to the App Store is very wide. We have 1.7 million apps in it. It's become an economic miracle.
Okay.
With over $138 billion of commerce just in the United
Mr. Cook,
States.
I really, really appreciate that sentiment. But, you know, I want to say to you that Apple enjoys enormous power to control which apps can reach consumers. Even some of the largest companies in the country fear your power. Our evidence suggests that your company has used its power to harm your rivals and boost your own business. This is fundamentally unfair. It harms small businesses that rely on you to reach customers. It stifles the innovation that is the lifeblood of our economy. Ultimately, it reduces the competition and choices that are made available to consumers, and that is a great concern to all of us. And I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. That concludes that round. In light of the request of Mr. Gates for a third round, and because many of my colleagues would like to get more fulsome answers on a number of issues,